The Appalachian Mountains stretch over 1,500 miles, from northern Alabama up into Canada. Most travelers see the Smokies, drive a stretch of the Blue Ridge Parkway, and call it done. But tucked into the hollows, gorges, and high meadows of this 200,000 square mile region are towns that look like the people walked out yesterday. A perfectly preserved mill village where Hollywood filmed the home of Katniss Everdeen with the movie props still inside the cabins. A model worker town built entirely of concrete that 100 sticks of dynamite couldn't bring down. A logging camp at 3,853 feet where residents reportedly saw frost in July. And our number one, a Pennsylvania town that has been on fire for over 60 years, where the post office revoked the zip code in 2002 and the streets are still warm to the touch. Stick around to the end because that story is genuinely surreal. If you love forgotten Appalachian history and the strange places industry left behind, hit that subscribe button. We publish stories like this every week. Today we're counting down 13 creepy abandoned towns in Appalachia. Let's go! Number 13. Henry River Mill Village, the Real District 12. In 2011, Lionsgate film scouts went looking for somewhere that could pass as the dirt-poor mining district of Panem. And they found an actual abandoned mill town just off Interstate 40 in Burke County, North Carolina. They didn't have to build a set. The town was already there. Henry River Mill Village was founded in 1905 by two North Carolina families, the Adderholts and the Rudisills. They picked the spot because the Henry River drops steeply enough through a small gorge to power a textile mill. They built 72 acres of self-contained company town, a dam, identical wood frame worker cottages, and a 2-story brick company store. For 65 years it produced fine-combed cotton yarn for lace makers. The mill closed in 1970. The main mill building burned down in 1977 with equipment still stored inside. The last resident left in 1987. When the Hunger Games crew arrived, they shot Peeta Mellark's bakery scene at the company store and dressed one cottage as Katniss Everdeen's home. The current owner has left the film props in place. You can walk into a house abandoned in 1987 and find a 2012 movie set inside it. Number 12. Blue Heron, Mine 18. This one is strange because the National Park Service rebuilt a ghost town as a ghost town. Blue Heron sits on the Big South Fork of the Cumberland River in McCreary County, Kentucky, founded in 1937 by the Stearns Coal and Lumber Company. The houses, the school, the depot, and the tipple were all designed to be portable. Stearns knew the seam would eventually play out, so they built the buildings as essentially heavy-duty knockdown kits. When Mine 18 closed in December 1962, the company hauled most of the structures away. 20 years later, the Big South Fork National River and Recreation Area absorbed the site. Planners had a choice: rebuild the town the way it was, or admit the buildings were gone. They split the difference. They built outlines. Today you walk through open metal frame skeletons of the schoolhouse, the company store, the bathhouse, the miners' homes. Recorded voices of former Mine 18 residents play inside each empty shell, describing the lives that filled the now invisible walls. A town haunted by its own reconstruction. Number 11. Concrete City, the town 100 sticks of dynamite couldn't kill. In 1924, the Glen Alden Coal Company packed one of the houses with 100 sticks of dynamite and lit the fuse. The explosion blew out the windows and doors and left visible scars across the interior walls. The reinforced concrete shell did not move. The company looked at the result, did the math, and walked away. The buildings are still there. The story starts in 1911, just outside Nanticoke, Pennsylvania. The Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad, owner of the Truesdale Colliery, then the largest coal breaker in the anthracite region, decided to build a model worker village out of poured concrete. They called it the Garden City of the Anthracite region. 22 family houses arranged in a square around a swimming pool, a baseball field, and tennis courts. Each house was poured in a single day using portable steel molds. Rent was $8 a month. Only foremen and English-speaking skilled workers were allowed in. The walls sweated condensation year-round. Clothes froze solid in closets in winter. A boy drowned in the swimming pool in 1914 and they filled it in. When the local government required a $200,000 sewer upgrade in 1924, the coal company quit. The concrete refused to let them. Number 10. Elkmont, Daisy Town. This is the strangest piece of property in the most visited national park in the United States. Elkmont sits inside Great Smoky Mountains National Park, near Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It was founded in 1908 as a logging town by Colonel Wilson B. Townsend's Little River Lumber Company, but within 2 years, Townsend realized he could make more money hauling wealthy Knoxvillians up his rail line than logs down it. So he sold them building lots. They built hunting cottages, founded the Appalachian Club, and erected a 50-room resort called the Wonderland Hotel. Then those same vacationers helped lobby Congress to turn the Smokies into a national park. The park bought them out. Most cottage owners took the half-price deal in exchange for a lifetime lease. Those leases were converted to 20 years in 1952, renewed in 1972, and not renewed in 1992. That left the Park Service with roughly 70 abandoned, historically significant cabins inside the busiest national park in the country, and no agreement on what to do with them. The Wonderland Hotel's main building collapsed in 2005 while officials were still arguing. Today, 19 cabins have been restored. The chimneys of the demolished ones still stand along the trails. The vacationers won the park. The park kept their houses. Number 9. Spruce, West Virginia. The highest, coldest town east of the Mississippi. There was no road into Spruce. There never was. Settled in 1902 at 3,853 feet on Shaver's Fork of the Cheat River in Pocahontas County, the town could only be reached by rail. Residents reportedly saw frosts every single month of the year, including July and August. The West Virginia Pulp and Paper Company built a 20-acre pulp mill here in 1904 on a high mountain meadow surrounded by red spruce forest. The mill fed paper plants in Covington, Virginia and Luke, Maryland. At its peak, the town held about 300 people, a company store, a schoolhouse, and a hotel, all clinging to the side of a mountain accessible only by locomotive. By 1920, West Virginia was essentially 90% logged out. The pulp mill closed in 1925. The Western Maryland Railway took over the site and ran a steam locomotive repair shop until the early 1950s, when diesel engines made the shop obsolete. Western Maryland did not just abandon Spruce. They burned every remaining structure to the ground. Concrete pads, bridge abutments, and rusted century-old rails are all that's left. A town wiped off the map by the railroad that built it. Number 8. Lost Cove, the Moonshiners' Republic on the state line. You can't drive there, you never could. Lost Cove sits in Poplar Gorge above the Nolichucky River in Yancey County, North Carolina, just barely on the wrong side of an ambiguous Tennessee-North Carolina border. The town was founded around 1864 by a Union soldier named Stephen Morgan Bailey. At its peak, about 100 people lived there in 13 to 15 houses. The only access was the Clinchfield, Carolina, and Ohio railway tracks running along the gorge below. When residents lobbied the state to build a road in, the legislature said no. Twice. Here's the part that defined Lost Cove. The state border running through the area was unresolved for nearly 50 years. Moonshiners could be charged but rarely successfully prosecuted because neither state could prove jurisdiction. Historian Christy Smith, who wrote the only published book on the town, found court records of Lost Cove residents charged for being in disputed territory. Smith traced the town's name itself to that courtroom phrase. The CC&O ran trains down the gorge daily. Lost Cove sold its whiskey to passing trainmen. The last family walked out in 1957. Wildfires in 2007 destroyed most of what was left. Today, 3 standing houses, a moss-covered cemetery, and Swin Miller's rusted Chevrolet are all that's still up there. A town legally invisible to 2 states for half a century. Number 7. Mortimer. The town Wilson Creek killed twice. In 1904, a West Virginia lumber baron named W. M. Ritter built a mill town along Wilson Creek in Caldwell County, North Carolina, at the foot of Grandfather Mountain. By 1906, Mortimer had a sawmill, a hotel, a church, a school, and even a motion picture facility. Theodore Roosevelt reportedly stayed at the Laurel Inn. At peak, the town held between 600 and 800 people. In 1916, a forest fire swept down from Grandfather Mountain into the valley, and a flood immediately followed it. The combination destroyed the logging railroad, the Lake Rodas Dam, and Ritter's entire operation. Ritter left within a year. The town tried to come back. United Mills opened a cotton mill in 1922. The Civilian Conservation Corps repaired what they could during the Depression. In 1934, a man named O.P. Lutz bought the town, ordered 6 hosiery machines from Germany, and brought German machinists over to install them on site. The factory had been operating for 6 days when the second disaster hit. On August 13, 1940, a coastal hurricane pushed Wilson Creek to a flood stage of 94 feet. It is still considered the worst flood in Caldwell County history. Witnesses watched entire houses float downstream. The German hosiery operation was washed out before it ever really started. The railroad was pulled up during World War II and melted down for the war effort. The boilers of the German factory are still in the woods. They never even got broken in. If you're enjoying these so far, drop a thumbs up and let us know in the comments which of these places you'd actually want to visit. The next 6 entries get heavier. Civil War atrocities in a high mountain valley. A coal town Henry Ford couldn't save. A drowned town with a ferry to its own cemetery. And a Pennsylvania borough that has been on fire since 1962. Number 6. Thurmond, West Virginia. More coal than Cincinnati. Captain William Dabney Thurmond came back from the Civil War, a Confederate veteran and a strict Baptist. In 1873, he was granted 73 acres along the north bank of the New River in exchange for surveying work. The Chesapeake and Ohio Railway pushed its main line through the New River Gorge that same year. Thurmond's tiny tract, hemmed in between sheer cliffs and the river, suddenly became the rail and coal hub of one of the richest coal seams in the United States. The town was incorporated in 1903. At its 1920s peak, more coal tonnage moved through Thurmond's rail yards than through the entire city of Cincinnati, Ohio. 15 passenger trains a day, the largest revenue-generating stop on the entire C&O system. Captain Thurmond banned alcohol, prostitution, and gambling within town limits, so they all crossed the river. The Dun Glen Hotel was built on the South Bank in 1901, just a short walk from the rail yards. According to local legend, never verified by Guinness or Ripley's, it hosted a poker game that allegedly ran for 14 straight years without stopping. A frequently quoted local saying captured the contrast. The only difference between Hell and Thurmond, people said, is that a river runs through Thurmond. The Dun Glen burned down in 1930. Diesel locomotives killed the steam locomotive servicing yard in the early 1950s. The town simply emptied out. Today, 4 people live in Thurmond. The National Park Service owns about 80% of it. CSX freight trains still rumble straight through the middle of downtown, and most of them don't slow down for it. Captain Thurmond got his Baptist town, he just didn't get to keep it. Number 5. Cataloochee. The fiddle tune before the killing. Cataloochee is a Cherokee phrase meaning wave upon wave of mountains. The valley sits surrounded by 6,000-foot peaks in Haywood County, North Carolina, including the 6,155-foot Big Cataloochee Mountain. The first white settlers arrived in the 1830s. Henry Caldwell bought land there in 1834. According to one account documented in Hattie Caldwell Davis's family history, 2 of Caldwell's neighbors spent a night in the 1830s fighting off panthers that were trying to claw down their cabin chimney to get at the pork they were cooking. During the Civil War, Cataloochee was a haven for deserters and Union sympathizers, and both sides launched raids into the valley. Union Colonel George W. Kirk's raiders attacked a makeshift hospital in the valley and killed or wounded 15 patients. Here's the detail that stops people cold. In a separate Civil War incident, Confederate Captain Albert Teague captured 3 Union sympathizers, George Grooms, Henry Grooms, and Mitchell Caldwell, and marched them to a ridge. Teague ordered Henry Grooms, who was a fiddler, to play a tune. When the song was finished, Teague executed all 3 men. After the war, the valley rebuilt itself as an apple farming community of around 1,200 people, with its own schoolhouse, 2 post offices, and a Baptist chapel. Then in 1928, a visiting minister stood up at a town meeting and announced that the federal government planned to take the whole valley for a national park. By 1943, virtually everyone was gone. The National Park Service kept the Beech Grove School with the desks and blackboards still inside, the Palmer Chapel, the Hiram Caldwell House, and a handful of cabins. In 2001, elk were reintroduced into the valley. The cabin doors still creak. The elk now bugle where the school once stood. Number 4, Nuttleberg, Henry Ford's failed coal town. In 1920, Henry Ford bought a coal town in West Virginia. He didn't just want coal, he wanted control of every raw material that fed his Detroit auto empire: iron, rubber, wood, and the steam coal his River Rouge steel mills burned. Nuttleberg, on the New River in Fayette County, had been founded 50 years earlier by an English coal entrepreneur named John Nuttall, who started buying gorge land at about $1 an acre in 1870, before the railroad had even reached the gorge. By 1900, the town had about 100 company houses, 80 beehive coke ovens, and a workforce that was majority African American. Carter G. Woodson, who later became known as the father of black history, worked the Nuttleberg and Kaymoor mines as a young man to earn money for his schooling. When Ford took over in 1920, he toured the operation personally and ordered it modernized. By 1926, his engineers had built a 1,385-foot steel conveyor running 500 feet down the side of the gorge, one of the longest conveyors ever built, to carry coal from the mine portal to the rail-level tipple. It still didn't work. Ford could not bend the C&O Railway's schedule to his demands. He could mine the coal. He just couldn't get it to Detroit fast enough or cheap enough. In 1928, 8 years in, he sold his interest and never came back. The mine struggled under 3 more owners and finally shut down in 1958. The conveyor is still there, rusted but structurally sound, snaking down the cliff face above the tipple. Roughly 40 of the original beehive coke ovens are still standing among the trees. Even Henry Ford couldn't beat the railroad. Number 3, Kaymoor, 821 steps down to a burned town. The Kaymoor Miners Trail in New River Gorge National Park starts at the rim and drops 821 wooden steps down a near-vertical sandstone cliff. Halfway down, it crosses the bench where the mine portal sits. At the bottom is what's left of Kaymoor Bottom, coke ovens, the processing plant, and the foundations of a town that has not had a permanent resident since 1962. The story starts in 1873 when a New York merchant named A. Lowe bought a tract of New River Gorge land as a coal reserve for his Virginia iron furnaces. He sat on it for 26 years. In 1899, the Kaymoor mine finally opened. The terrain was so steep that the company built the town on 2 levels: Kaymoor Top on the gorge rim and Kaymoor Bottom 560 vertical feet below at river level, connected by a single-track inclined railway running up a 30-degree slope. Workers and their families crossed that vertical drop daily for more than 60 years. Pay was largely in company scrip, redeemable only at the company store. The town had no churches, no banks, no saloons, and no town hall, just segregated schools, the company store, a pool hall, and a ball field. Between 1900 and 1962, Kaymoor produced roughly 16 to 17 million tons of coal. That coal fueled U.S. Navy and merchant marine ships during both World Wars. By 1952, the lower town was abandoned. In 1960, a fire destroyed most of what remained. The mine itself closed in 1962 after the seam was exhausted. Visitors today say the strangest part is the climb back up. 821 wooden steps. Alone with empty mine portals and rusted machinery for the last 800 vertical feet. The mountain haulage is gone. The stairs are how everyone gets out now. Number 2, Proctor. The Promised Road, the Drowned Town, and the ferry to the cemetery. There is a 6-mile stretch of road just outside Bryson City, North Carolina, that ends at a sealed tunnel in the woods. A sign at the entrance reads, in quiet anger, "Welcome to the road to nowhere, a broken promise." 1943. The story begins 3 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The federal government decided it needed massive hydroelectric capacity to refine the aluminum that would go into B-29 bombers and the centrifuges at Oak Ridge. The Tennessee Valley Authority broke ground on Fontana Dam in 1942 and finished it in 1944. Behind the dam, the rising waters formed Fontana Lake and submerged Highway 288, the only road in or out of the Hazel Creek communities of Swain County, North Carolina. One of those communities was Proctor. It had been settled in the 1830s by Moses and Patience Proctor and grew into a Ritter Lumber Company town with a school, a church, a post office, a theater, and a cafe. Some families didn't even dismantle their houses when they were forced out. The federal government had promised them a brand new road on the north shore of the lake so they could drive back to visit their family cemeteries. Only 6 or 7 miles of that road were ever built. Construction stopped in the 1970s, citing environmental concerns including acid-bearing rock and rising costs. The completed segment now ends at a 1,200-foot tunnel that opens onto the woods on the other side with no road to connect to. In 2018, the U.S. Department of the Interior closed out a $52 million cash settlement to Swain County in lieu of finishing the road. The dispute had run for 75 years. The Calhoun House still stands on Hazel Creek. The Ritter Lumber Mill ruins are above the waterline. The family cemeteries are still up there. On the Saturday around Memorial Day every year, the National Park Service runs a ferry across Fontana Lake. Descendants step off the boat, walk uphill, and lay flowers on the graves of grandparents they were never able to drive back to. Number 1. Centralia, Pennsylvania. The town that has been on fire since 1962. You park on a paved street that goes nowhere. The asphalt under your shoes is warm, not warm from the sun, warm from underneath. Wisps of steam rise out of cracks in the pavement. Trees stand on both sides where there used to be houses. The grid is still here, sidewalks, curbs, stop signs at every empty intersection. But the houses are gone. At the end of one street, a Ukrainian Greek Catholic church from 1911 still stands. Down the hill, the cemeteries are still active. The only sound is wind and the hiss of steam vents. Centralia was founded in 1866 in the anthracite region of Columbia County, Pennsylvania, by a railroad surveyor named Alexander Rhea. By 1890, it had 2,761 residents, 7 churches, 27 saloons, 2 theaters, and 14 grocery stores. Most of the work was underground, in mines that ran for hundreds of miles in interconnected tunnels beneath the town. On May 27, 1962, the Centralia Borough Council hired 5 members of the local volunteer fire company to clean out the town dump. The dump was an abandoned strip mine pit next to Oddfellows Cemetery. The council's chosen method for cleaning it was to set it on fire. Pennsylvania state law prohibited landfill fires. The council minutes did not record the method. The fire was doused that night. It reignited days later. They doused it again. It came back. Within weeks, the fire had crept through an unsealed 15-foot opening in an old mine wall and ignited the anthracite coal seam beneath the town. By August 1962, carbon monoxide had filled the working mines and forced them permanently shut. State and federal agencies tried to extinguish the fire repeatedly through the 1960s and 1970s. They failed every time. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski fell through a steaming sinkhole that opened beneath him in his grandmother's backyard. He was pulled out seconds before the carbon monoxide would have killed him. That was the moment that changed everything. In 1984, Congress appropriated $42 million to relocate the town. In 1992, Pennsylvania invoked eminent domain on every building in the borough. In 2002, the U.S. Postal Service revoked the zip code 17927. In 2013, the 7 remaining holdouts reached a settlement allowing them to stay in their homes for the rest of their lives. After they die, the properties revert to the state. The fire is still burning. The Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection estimates it could keep burning for another 250 years. People used to grow tomatoes here in midwinter because the ground stayed warm. It still is. Appalachia has more abandoned towns than anyone has officially counted. Industry left them. Lakes drowned them. Fires erased them. For me, it's Centralia. 5 people, no zip code, ground that's still warm 60 years later. That one stays with you. Which one stayed with you? Drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this kind of forgotten Appalachian history, subscribe. We publish stories like this every week.